the amount of cash that we can keep in the business to reinvest to buy properties, right? So we're not trying to grow for the sake of growing. We're trying to figure out what's the best way to take that income that we're making for short-term rentals and use that to buy property, because that, in the end, that's our ultimate goal, is to buy more properties, because we believe that is, for us, the path to long-term wealth.
Your network is your net worth. Come listen to some of the most successful people I know share invaluable knowledge, stories, and advice in real estate, business, and beyond. This is Weiss Advice. Whether you want to take your business or personal life to the next level, look no further. Welcome back to another episode of Weiss Advice. I'm your host, as always, Yonah Weiss, excited to be here, as I am every day, with a new guest, an incredible person that I'm excited to learn about, and I hope you are too. So thanks for tuning in. Today we have Michael Chang. Welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Thanks, Yonah. I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on the show.
It's a pleasure. It's always great to meet with people and to have these interviews with people that, we've interacted before. We've done a lot of business together, and I, want to learn about who you are, and I think our listeners do too. And what's been incredible is we've had several people recently actually talk about short-term rentals, about vacation rentals. And this is something that you've done, but from a little bit of a more, I would say, unique vantage point, in that you went from a very high-paying executive, kind of corporate job into short-term rentals, and are basically, I don't want to give it away, but, living the life that you want to live and kind of making your own rules. So tell us a little bit about how you got started in that, and, give us the background, Michael.
Sure. Again, thank you for the kind introduction. For me, I immigrated to this country when I was 4 years old. I grew up in California, and, when we started out, we didn't have a lot. So we had to really, figure things out. And I think this, Airbnb and investment banking, things in life, you have to kind of just figure it, hard work and figure out. I went to Cornell for business school, and then I started in investment banking here in New York in 2009, did investment banking for 10 years. And my wife and I got into the short-term rental business. Actually, we kind of fell backwards into it. Her dad had a vacancy in one of his buildings that was open, and it was a 3-bedroom. We paid $2,200 a month in rent, and that was late 2016. And that was our first experience in short-term rentals. And we were like, wow, this is such a great business. My wife quit her job about 6 months after to scale the business. And I joined her when I quit in late 2018. And we've, both of us now spend our full-time jobs are now on our short-term rental business. And it's really allowed us to, live, like to your point, live the life that we want. And it's been a really, really exciting journey over the last 5 years.
That's awesome. And I want to, just kind of reiterate there. You talk about investment banking. That for a lot of people is that's like the top notch of the New York investment scene and private equity. You're getting paid a lot of money. And for people to leave a high paying corporate job, there has to be, for a lot of people, a financial, equality, at least in terms of what you're getting. Were you able to actually replace that income, or was it just, replacing the job and living off whatever it is that you're making?
Well, in the beginning, it was not as much as I was making before, but we were lucky that we had savings from the job. So we were able to take this opportunity to start our own business. But now, 5 years later, on an after-tax basis, we take home more cash than I used to do in investment banking. And that is the power of a great business model and great tax planning. Mm-hmm. And being able to kind of use that knowledge from investment banking, understanding how that all works, and utilizing that as a strategy for us has been really life-changing, because now we're able to have 26 Airbnbs. Wow. But that's enough to expand. That's enough to replace an investment banker income and my wife's income as well. And we're able to take care of our parents. So, and we have a 10-month-old daughter in New York and living in New York City. So, anyone that knows New York City, it's not it's an expensive place to live. And, right. Being able to kind of combine these strategies together has really changed our lives. And, working with you on the tax side and just working with really, really smart people to put it all together has been a really fun part of this journey.
So you mentioned you have 26 short-term rentals to date. That's incredible, first of all. And, it's pretty clear a business model like that you can make quite a lot of money if run correctly. Like you said, with the right business plan and with the right tax planning, taking home quite a bit of money. How did you choose the markets, the vacation markets or the actual markets, the locations where you rent these properties?
Yeah, so our business is divided into there's a rental arbitrage side where we enter into long-term leases with landlords, and then there are properties that we buy. So we've actually coined this phrase called the AFLAC method. My wife is the one that coined it, not me. But the way that we think about our business is arbitrage. We start with arbitrage. We use that for cash flow, right? We get from that cash flow, we use that to acquire properties. And then we use cost segregation and tax planning in order to shield that from federal taxation. So that really increases the amount of cash that we can keep in the business and use that to reinvest to buy properties, right? So That's the key. We're not trying to grow for the sake of growing. We're trying to figure out what's the best way to take that income that we're making for short-term rentals and use that to buy property, because that in the end, that's our ultimate goal, is to buy more properties, because we believe that is for us the path to long-term wealth, because we can use that for Airbnb and not just long-term rentals, which is
absolutely
a key part of our strategy.
Sure.
I think the second point on market identification, for rental arbitrage, we really like urban markets. And most of all of our inventory is in Philadelphia, so it's a great city. Plus, Northeast, it's a good rates. A lot of people go in and out of Philadelphia for education, sports. The Phillies are in the World Series, education, University of Pennsylvania, and then we take that cash flow and we buy in traditional vacation rental markets. For us in the Smoky Mountains, but Florida, South Carolina, North Carolina, they're good states for that type of buy and hold investing.
Gotcha.
So that's in a very, 30 seconds, the crux of our strategy.
That's great. So when you were talking about the short-term rentals in Philadelphia and these rental arbitrages, are these clearly, that's a different business model than the vacation rentals and probably a different consumer, right, than you have typically when you're going vacation rentals. Which one would you say, and we've had someone on the podcast talk about these two models before as well, but I'm always curious to hear different opinions. Which would you say is easier to run, if that's possible?
Rental arbitrage by design is easier to run because we partner with owners of large multifamily buildings. So, you have 200 units in central Philadelphia. We have 20 of them and they're segregated on a different floor. So, there's a front desk, there's maintenance, there's one roof, there's not multiple roofs, there's parking, there's a gym. So that is a much easier to run. We have a storage. So one cleaning team, it's really like a mini hotel, and it just really kind of cycles through. But that's really more for cash flow, because that we don't own the building, obviously, we're leasing the building or releasing parts of the building. But when you own, you're responsible for all the maintenance, the, things that break, the AC goes out. That's a service call that you have to budget for. So it's a different business model, but you get to participate in the increase in value of the home and the depreciation, which you don't get to participate in when you're lease arbitraging. So those are different business models,
sure,
but they're very congruent if you know how to put them together. And it's very, very powerful. So a lot of people do one or the other, but they really should be doing both, and then wrapping that together with tax planning, specifically using cost segregations for bonus depreciation.
Yeah. And to our listeners, just so you know, I did not prod Michael in any way to be talking about and plugging cost segregation over and over. No, just kidding.
No, it's such an important part of what we do. It's such an important part of what we do. It is one of the linchpins of the strategy, actually, because 25% of the asset value that you're buying immediately protects all of our rental arbitrage income. And if I'm not paying 35% on that, I can take that and basically is the equity that I can use to go buy more houses. And if you can figure out that closed system, excellent, just excellent results. Because ultimately in the end, the way that I measure business success is after-tax free cash flow.
Mm-hmm.
People think about revenue, in the real estate world, I think a lot of it's about how many doors you own, what revenue, what's your NOI. Those are all very, very important, right? I think at least for me as a business owner, for me, it's what do I actually take home at the end of the day? And what can I use to reinvest in the business?
That's a really important point. And I don't think a lot of people, especially investors, don't consider those aspects of, that aspect of specifically what is your net, at the end of the day, how much are you taking home? And because that's what's going to continue to compound if you reinvest that money. And I think that once you have enough cash flow to pay for your lifestyle and, all the expenses that you have, anything left over, instead of paying Uncle Sam, you can just invest that.
Exactly. And that's the beauty of owning your own business, because you go from gross to net, whereas when you work, you go from net to gross. The money is already taken from your paycheck,
Mm-hmm.
and you got to try to claw it back from Uncle Sam, which is pretty difficult. But if you go from gross, and then there's a lot of different strategies that you can use to minimize that tax liability. And real estate, candidly, is designed to defer taxes. It's by design. So these aren't loopholes. You're just utilizing the system as intended. And it's complex. So, you really have to, find smart people to work with you, and everyone's situation is different. So, but it's powerful.
For sure. And you say, the end goal is to continue to buy more properties, right? Buying properties obviously will create long-term wealth. That's incredible. And, do you have a 5-year or 10-year or anything like that goal of a certain, number of properties you want to buy? Or is there, something you want to do in life? I know you guys do a lot of traveling as well, which is pretty awesome. And now you have the freedom to do that without the corporate job, tying you down. But, what are some of your goals, if you can share with us? I'd be curious to hear.
Yeah. For us, running about 25 units is really perfect for our lifestyle. That's kind of what we want. So we're always in the process of upgrading the units that we have,
Mm-hmm.
and buying to replace the rental arbitrage units. That's really kind of the system that we developed for ourselves. So we own 7 units right now. One is six are short-term rentals. One is a long-term rental. And we're just going to continue to buy more property. And when it makes sense to let things go, we'll just let it go. Because I think for us, it's really, we have a lifestyle, we have a number in mind that allows us to accomplish our goals. We're not shooting for 1,000 units and, this, that, and that number. We actually don't even take outside capital. It's our personal capital and some friends and family. So that's really the goal. And it's really important for a lot of people when you start, just actually having, what do you have that goal in mind? Because goalposts really do move as you continue to grow your business. There's always someone making more money than you. There's
Mm-hmm.
always someone bigger. But, if you define that up front, those milestones, that will really give you happiness. And I think for us, it's giving us happiness in what we do. And it motivates us when we get up in the morning to continue to work and grow in the business. And, we're leaving for a month in January. It's Lunar New Year. And
Mm-hmm.
we're going to Asia for a month and bring our daughter to visit my wife's family there.
That's awesome. I
would have never been able to do that in investment banking, especially in January, because that's right when, if you have a professional job, that's when the fun happens.
Yeah.
Everyone wants to start the new year really, it's really busy during the new year.
Sure. Absolutely. And that's awesome that you're able to do that, and having those goals and just really having to know what it is that you want and where you're going. And obviously being able to take time off like that, take a month off and just go travel and visit family. That's incredible. I mean, and having the right teams to be able to, to run the business while you're gone. I mean, the properties, you live in New York City, the properties you own are out of state, or the ones that you rent out, the arbitrage, are also out of state. So presumably you can be doing this from anywhere, right? So it really gives you those options.
Yeah. I mean, we're still going to be working in Asia, but just we can work there. And we have a great team. And I'm really glad you brought up that point. It's the secret. I won't say secret, but a key part of building a business. And that's where the investment banking training really helped. It's working with CEOs and founders and seeing how they built their businesses, over those 10 years, taking those lessons. And as I built the business, really taking those lessons and how do I apply that to my small business, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a big part of that is being able to hire, being able to recruit, train, retain, motivate your team. My team has been with us. They're all in the Philippines and Bangladesh.
Oh, cool.
We never met in person. But they've been with us for the longest tenured person has been with us for 3 years. And that is really unheard of for remote work or even BPO. But we've been in a, culture that's been really important. We've been able to keep our people. They understand the business. they're committed and it's part of their lives and they run it. We spend maybe an hour a day on the business.
Wow.
It really runs by itself because we've been lucky enough to work with a team that cares and is highly motivated. And that is really one of the key success to business.
That's awesome. I just want to kind of highlight that. You just said you work about an hour a day on running 26 units. That's incredible. I mean, it really is. It's a testament to the power of these short-term rentals and these vacation rentals where you can really do this from anywhere. And I mean, I just have to ask, what are you doing with the rest of the time during the day? I mean, you have other projects, other hobbies, other things you're working on?
Yeah, we have other projects that we're working on. And a lot of it's spent on the growth. And when I say an hour a day on the business, that's just on the operational side.
Right.
A lot of it's just reviewing reports, payments, reviewing the numbers that come in. The rest of the time is growing, right? Meeting other smart investors, developers. How do we continue to grow the business? How do we continue to deploy capital? Especially in these times where rates have obviously come up a lot over the last 6 months. The economy is still strong, but I think 2023, a lot of people have it's unclear of the direction. So there's a lot of uncertainty. So how do we continue to grow the business in an intelligent way, right? And sometimes the best thing to do is actually pause, right? I think that's an issue when you do real estate full time. Is you feel like you always have to do a deal. If you're not doing a deal, you're not working.
Right.
And I think for us, like a big lesson and a lesson I've learned from others, that definitely not smart on my own. And like learning from others is sometimes you have to just stop and like, okay, like now's the time to harvest cash and now's the time and look for opportunities that will come because there will be people that overextend themselves. And that's the time when you can go in and, get them out of a problem, but also, being able to buy at a, below market on attractive assets.
Sure.
So we're constantly kind of in that process. How do we continue to grow the business in an intelligent way?
That's awesome. And it really is, a testament again to what you guys have built and been consistent with this, having a team overseas, doing things like that. I mean, this is something that every time I speak to someone about short-term rentals, it seems more and more attainable to do. Obviously, it's a business. Obviously, it does take time setting up. And I'm sure when you buy a new property, and I've seen some of the work you put in to designing and actually going down, to the Smoky Mountains in Tennessee and putting, designing and doing the actual work of the setup. That does take time. And that's probably more of a passion project than anything else.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. I don't want to discount that. This is an hour a day kind of thing. It's an hour a day once you get everything set up, but there is a lot of work that goes in that. And obviously we've had now the experience of 5 years and we kind of know what to do. We have a team in place. But I would say that, anything in life worth doing is not easy. If it was easy, everyone would be doing short-term rentals and there'd be no profit here, right? Like there's a way to do this. And there's a lot of resources online to learn. And I think even if you're working a 9 to 5, you don't have to quit. There are people that if you own long-term rentals and you think that it's in a good area that you can do short-term rentals, I mean, you really 5Xing your cash flow. I have a long-term rental in Philadelphia and the cash flow of that versus the other rental arbitrage units is over 10x. Then, I don't even want to say the number because it just doesn't sound believable, but it is. So if you have long-term rentals that you're thinking about converting to short-term rentals, or you have a job where things are a little shaky right now and you want another source of income that's not correlative with your job, this is a very viable alternative. And if real estate is something that you're passionate about, then I highly encourage people to dig in a little bit and figure out if this is something that fits their goals, as to your earlier point.
Yeah. And I don't want to get too deep into this question now I'm about to ask you, but you mentioned how, if this were so easy, everyone would be doing that. That's totally true. And I get that 100%. But at the same time, we have seen, you've been in the business for, 5 years now already or more. Have you seen a big uptick of, I wouldn't say saturation is probably not the right word, but more people that are buying properties and getting involved in the short-term rentals, now more than ever?
Yeah, there are definitely more people that are doing this, right? You can see it in the supply numbers.
Mm-hmm.
There are markets that are saturated, right? There are markets that are saturated. Houston, for example, is a saturated market. There's a lot of inventory that went on there. And I think a lot of it was a response to a huge increase in demand for travel and this type of travel. And you can say that part of it is the COVID bump, which I totally agree. There was the stimulus money and people were cooped up at home and they wanted to travel. But
No, and the hotels were closed.
Everything was closed, right? So, there's obviously kind of a temporary bump there. But I would argue that the long-term trend for people that want this type of accommodation continues unabated. And the simple reason, and for me now as a father, like the thought of getting two hotel rooms next to each other without a kitchen, without a common area is really unappealing to me. When I travel, I really would like a 2-bedroom apartment that has a living room and a kitchen where the baby can sleep in one room, we can be in another room, and there's a common area that, we can prepare meals and be together, right? Versus a hotel, which is great for business travel, for instance, but you really lack, that space is not conducive to, I think, a new type of travel. And obviously there's remote work. There are people that just enjoy, want to travel a lot more. They can spend a month in a new location while they work or on vacation. So I do think that there is a secular trend that continues unabated, but there was a temporary bump. So what does that mean, right? If you're in a market that's a lot of supply, you really need to think about, is your property going to be different from the cookie cutter stuff that's on the market? If it's going to be cookie cutter, then you need to rethink about it. But there are plenty of markets where it's not saturated. And that's the trick of the business. It's
finding this
market. Right, exactly. And that's just real estate in general, right? Or really business in general. Where do you find the opportunity? And there are different ways of analyzing that. But I think in a short way, or a shortcut of doing that, is where you live, where you went to school, where your family is. Like, you're going to know those markets better than a lot of people. And that's where your competitive advantage is. So I would always start there if those are good markets. And those are obviously good places to invest.
Right.
So hopefully I wasn't too long.
No, it wasn't at all.
Truncated as much as possible.
No, and I think the issue or the concept of supply and demand really drives every business, and so much more so with the short-term rentals. And I would agree with you that a lot of people would much prefer especially when it's pretty similar in cost, a hotel versus an Airbnb, and you get more for your money and you're able to have more space, kind of more freedom, not cooped up in a little hotel room or whatever. But yeah, I think a lot of people would prefer that as well. And which is why there is such demand for short-term rentals.
And people say there's a lot of supply, but that supply is a response to a big demand for that.
Exactly.
Right? So that the demand is sustainable, then that's great. And I would also add, some people, they don't want to stay downtown. They don't want to stay in the central business district. They want to be in a neighborhood, right? Somewhere that they can walk and get coffee in the morning, right? Like, that there's that aspect to it too. Like, you're not just in a Hilton or a Marriott in the middle of downtown, right? You're actually in a cool neighborhood. So yeah, I'm obviously very bullish on that. Obviously, we're responsibly investing. We're not just kind of throwing it. And I think that's the function of, a lot of corporate experience, just understanding how these cycles work, and too, just being older and having a family, right? We look at things in a different prism, right? It's not like long-term wealth is, long-term accumulation of wealth is important. It's not how I do the next year or two. It's how I do over the next 20 years. That's what really matters to me.
That's awesome. I love that. Love that perspective. And we can really go down so many rabbit holes now with the short-term rentals. And I had questions about the arbitrage and about, the differentiating yourself in the market with different amenities and things like that. But we may have to save that for another conversation, because I want to transition now to what we call the final four. These are 4 questions I ask all my guests, Michael. First one for you is, what is the worst job that you ever had?
The worst job I ever had was in college. It was, again, didn't have much money, so took whatever job that we could. And there was a job where I had to dig irrigation ditches around campus. And that was like 6 in the morning till 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And that was the summer job, and because it paid $18 an hour. And this is, 1999. So that was actually real money. That was like really, really hard work. And I had a boss that really was like pretty tough on us. But I would say that actually was a formative experience, because I realized, like, this is not what I want to do in life. And I was not a great student. And that really made me redouble my efforts to be a much better student, because that wasn't the kind of work that I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And, it's like, okay, all right, this is like, you do X, then you get Y. All right, well, I need to do something different.
100%. Yeah, we always learn from those earlier experiences. And that does not sound like one that would have pushed you in that direction. So definitely. Second question for you. What is a book you've read that's given you a paradigm shift?
There's a book called The Richest Man in Babylon, which is a very small book, and it's fiction, but it teaches some very important life lessons about money and family and how you spend your time. It's a very short book, And I highly recommend, if you haven't read it, to get it from Amazon. It's like $8 and you can read it in the afternoon. It's a great book. And for me, it really helped, bless you. It really helped me frame how I wanted to look, how I wanted to manage my money, manage my time, how I wanted to translate that into how I wanted to be a father and a husband. It was, for me, it was a very kind of powerful book, albeit short. There's an important lesson in there about, not forcing your money to do unnatural things because they will run away. And the point of that, I always remember that lesson is, if something's too good to be true, it's probably, you got to be really, really careful, right? Because if you push your money to do 10x in 10 months, it's unlikely that's going to happen and that your money is going to fly away from you. So that was actually, and he has a really funny story about that, that really stuck with me. So that was something that I always kind of be mindful of is, be smart and responsible with your money and don't force it to do unnatural things.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's a very powerful book. Definitely recommend that to everyone. Really easy read, and we'll put it in the show notes. And they actually have something I saw for kids also called The Richest Kid in Babylon, kind of adapted, for children to understand the same concepts. So in a kind of different story. So that's pretty cool. Third question for you is, what is a skill or talent that you would like to learn?
I'd like to be better on the design part. My wife is the brains behind making our properties look great and have people, people love the design of her properties. And I wish I had a little bit more of that. I think that would help me be a better partner with her in designing these properties. So that's something I definitely, want to continue to work on.
Yeah, it's a great skill to have, especially when you're trying to stand out and differentiate yourself in a saturated market.
And the lesson there is too, is like, you partner with people that are better at things that are good at things that you're not, because you can't be good at everything. So find people that are great in their specialty. And if you put those two together, then, you can create something really unique.
Very cool. Fourth and final question, Michael, what does success mean to you?
Success to me means being able to spend as much time as I want with my baby girl and my wife. Like, that is for me. And, every day I look at what we do as in, how can I be a better father and a better husband? And then that for me is like the key goal. Like, all this stuff is great, but in the end, it's family. It's being able to provide for my wife, my daughter, my parents, her parents. Like, that is ultimately what success is. For me, it's not a Lamborghini or it's like that. It's how I get to control and spend my time and be the best father, the best son, the best husband I can be. That's success for me.
Awesome. That's amazing. And I think most parents would agree with that sentiment as well. So well done. Well said. And thank you, for joining us on this podcast. I would love to ask you where our listeners can find you or reach out to you.
You can find me on Instagram. My account is Michael Chang BNB. That's a great place to find me. Or you can email me and I'll provide the email to Yona and he can put it in the show notes.
Awesome. We'll definitely do that. And again, thank you. It's really been awesome. Love to get to know what's making you tick and how you're running the business and being so successful. So we can all learn from you and replicate that as well for our own lives. So appreciate you taking the time again.
Thanks, Yona. Appreciate you having me on.
Yeah. And to our listeners, remember, the best advice comes only when you ask. Real quick, I have one question for you. Did you like this episode? If you did, I want to ask you a huge favor. See, the biggest thing that helps this podcast grow and that will spread this message to the whole world is that if you leave a review, a rating, and subscribe to the podcast. What that does is it basically tells the platforms that this podcast is out on is that you like my stuff and I'm doing something right. So take a few seconds out of your day, hit that subscribe button, leave a rating or review. I would be extremely grateful. Also, I want to hear from you guys. So I want to hear some feedback. If you have any questions for future episodes, please find me on LinkedIn. Send me a DM, connection request, Yona Weiss, and I'd love to hear from you.